The Philippines' 1986 People Power Revolution, taking a stand in a peaceful way. The year was 1986 when the Filipinos decided to take a stand against 14 years of oppression and dictatorship. The 1986 People Power Revolution was the first non-violent, bloodless revolution in history. Not a single life was lost during this peaceful revolution. But what really led the Filipinos to unite and take a stand? How did they do it? It all began on September 22, 1972, when the Philippines' late President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law in the Philippines in order to preserve his presidency after his second term and to extend his power over the country. Marcos was the 10th President of the Philippines. This was the beginning of his dictatorship.
As of the 21st of this month, I signed Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law.
Through martial law, Marcos gave himself virtually absolute power and control over the Philippines and its military. He suspended the 1935 Constitution, which was written for the Commonwealth of the Philippines with the approval of the United States to ensure that the United States would live up to its promise to grant the Philippines independence. He also dissolved the Congress. He commanded the military to arrest all his political opponents and took over all media and establishments. One of the opposition leaders was Benigno Ninoy Aquino. Aquino was thrown in prison for 7 years. While he was in prison, he continued his fight over Marcos' regime, but eventually developed a heart condition. He suffered a heart attack in 1980, so he requested to go to the United States for treatment, as he refused to be treated in the Philippines for fear of his life. His request was granted by the First Lady Imelda Marcos when he agreed on 2 agreements. First, that he will never come back, and second, he will not talk against Marcos' regime in the United States. Marcos ruled the Philippines with martial law for 9 years. When Marcos realized that he was already in control of the country, he decided to lift martial law in 1981.
Minister of the Philippines by virtue of the powers vested in me by the Constitution, do hereby revoke Proclamation 1081, proclaiming a state of martial law in the Philippines.
However, the lifting of martial law did not lift the suspension of the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus, especially in the southern part. Writ of habeas corpus is a citizen's right to be tried before a judge or court when they are arrested. Without this right, Marcos could order his military to arrest or kill anyone for whatever reason he chose. Benigno Aquino stayed in the US during his heart treatment in 1980. Aquino wanted to come back to the Philippines to continue his fight against Marcos' regime, even though he knew that Marcos would probably order the military to assassinate him. Aquino was shot on August 21, 1983, as soon as his plane landed. This was where the People Power Revolution rooted its beginning. The Philippines military marked Rolando Galman as Aquino's assassin before it was found that it was the military who assassinated Aquino. Galman suddenly disappeared at the tarmac when Aquino exited the plane. Therefore, he was also killed by the military. He died next to Aquino.
Yes, tama. Yes, you just exit.
This was the last straw for the Filipinos. Small peaceful revolutions began to express the Filipinos' desire for changes in the government. Benigno Aquino's wife, Corazon Aquino, carried on her husband's work against Marcos and grew to be one of Marcos' most prominent political opponents. Marcos, under pressure from the US government, announced on November 3, 1985 that there would be a snap election in early 1986. He wanted to show the people of the Philippines and the world that his authority and regime was still effective. The election took place on February 7, 1986. His opponent was the widowed Corazon Aquino. Her symbol was the letter L, which stands for Laban, meaning to fight in English. It also represented her political party, which was PDP Laban. PDP stands for Philippine Democratic Party. The COMELEC, which stands for Commission on Elections, said that Marcos was the winner of the election. However, the Comelec was controlled by the president, and it was later found that Marcos won through bribery and enormous voting fraud. The real results, which came from National Movement for Free Elections, or NAMFREL, the election watchdog of the Philippines, guarded and supported by patriotic Filipinos, showed that Aquino won. This caused two military leaders to withdraw their support for Marcos. These two people were Juan Ponce Enrile, the defense minister, and Fidel V. Ramos, the vice chief of staff of the armed forces of the Philippines. They stopped recognizing Marcos as president because Aquino had won the election. This was the beginning of the EDSA Revolution. The EDSA Revolution began on February 22, 1986. EDSA stands for Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, and it is a highway that goes around Manila, the capital of the Philippines. They started asking the Filipinos to support their action. They used their troops to protect two Filipino military camps, Camp Crame and Camp Aguinaldo, from Marcos' army, and voted that Marcos be kicked out of presidency. However, Marcos took control of all the media to prevent the message from reaching the Filipinos. On day one of the EDSA Revolution, at 9 o'clock in the evening, the late Archbishop of the Philippines, Cardinal Jaime Sin, sent a message to all Filipinos through Radio Veritas, a Catholic radio station, and was the only medium that was able to secretly broadcast during the revolution. This message instructed the Filipinos to surround Camp Aguinaldo and Camp Crame. In response, and the Philippines being a Catholic country, thousands of Filipinos from different walks of life stood in the street of EDSA and did no violent actions. Priests, nuns, and people from the community kneeled in front of tanks and soldiers ordered to attack the camps. Hand in hand, they sang, prayed, and were friendly to all the soldiers. They gave them food and flowers. Soldiers were talked to, kissed, and hugged. Some people who were at the site said that the experience was nothing like a revolution. They said that it was more like a huge prayer rally. These peaceful actions and bravery moved the soldiers who were ordered to attack the camps. The revolution lasted for 4 days. As days passed, much of Marcos' supporters abandoned him.
Decided with us. Was it intense? Was it scary? Yes. But on our way to the rally or to the revolution, we do not know what to expect. There was an intense feeling in the air then. We knew that even a small firecracker, if you light it, it can start a civil war. It was that instead. As soon as we reach the main area, which is in the corner of EDSA, just before Camp Crame, Camp Aguinaldo, it was a totally different feeling. There was a totally different spirit in the air. But there was a euphoric feeling. People, they were dancing, singing. Food was so abundant. If you need anything, for example, if you're injured, people are always, there are so many people willing to help you. For the first time, I felt the Filipinos united under one prayer and under one hope.
The revolution ended on February 25th. With orders from late President Ronald Reagan himself, American troops flew Marcos out of the country where he found asylum in the United States in Hawaii. On February 25, 1986, Corazon Aquino was sworn in as President of the Philippines as a result of her victory in the snap election. She became the first woman President of the Philippines. The Filipinos celebrated on the streets, and it was the start of the new era. The Filipinos were able to show the world that taking a stand does not always have to involve war or violent acts. If people will just unite for the same cause, change will happen without using violence. Let us just hope and pray that the new generation of the Filipinos will continue to safeguard the independence and freedom that their parents fought for, and will always remember that change can be achieved in a peaceful manner.